fours. Last week we did twos. This evening we're doing twos at the top of the heart center, threes in the center, and fours at the bottom of the heart center. And as we know, all of these types, twos, threes, and fours, all have, all relate to this concept of image. How do I see myself? How do others see me? And with the fours, it's really about amplifying feelings. So feelings for the fours are the coin of the realm. And the fours are called in various systems intense creatives, romantics, individualists, but at the core of it, it's this really strong desire to feel unique and special. So oftentimes, as children, they may have had the experience of being abandoned or of having sort of experienced this notion of paradise lost, where there was some ideal circumstance that then became less ideal. And by internalizing this, the message was, what did I do, right? As a little kid, we think we're responsible for creating the universe, right? So the feeling is, if I had been more special or unique, would I have not lost this ideal circumstance? So fours cultivate an image of being deep, sensitive, and authentic, and they want others to perceive them as unique and special. And along the way, they learn to keep searching for this ideal love or perfect circumstance to make them feel loved, whole, and complete again. And along the ways, develop feelings of longing and envy. So the typical four thinking pattern is very introspective. They can be quick to internalize negative feedback and data, but conversely can have a hard time accepting or believing the positive. And so the intense creative will oftentimes put a lot of focus on sort of scanning for feeling unwanted or unwelcome. It's just sort of at the core of the feeling state of this type of person. Typical action for the four is to show up in the world as quite individual, quirky, or focused on making a difference. Very aware of process and how they do things. So they can be quite attracted to ritual, and they will tend to search for meaning and symbolism through action. So the intense creative type will oftentimes put effort into self-actualization and creative expression. So it's wonderful having fours on our teams because they think out of the box. I mean, they really are the ones who are kind of intrigued by, well, what if we did it this way? What if we did it that way? What if we came up with this unique design for something? And it truly is. It's a lovely skill set to have. And I've experienced in my own professional life with working with fours that it can be the most exhilarating of experiences, and it can also be really trying, right? Because fours can be very insistent that when they've come up with something that's the best way of doing it. A typical four from a feeling state takes life and emotions very seriously. As I mentioned, for fours, feelings are the coin of the realm. They may feel slightly dissatisfied in a weird way when everything is going well, because when one has this vision of an idealized state, even if reality is pretty good, there's still kind of this sense of, okay, well, maybe I got it wrong, and maybe I'm missing something here, right? So in terms of leadership specifically, the fours leadership paradigm is to create organizations that give people meaning and purpose so that they are inspired to do excellent work. A type 4 leader emphasizes the creation of a shared vision, believing that being part of an important vision gives them and the people they lead a sense of meaning and purpose, inspiring everyone to be their best selves at work and to bring their best selves into their work. Okay? So, Bridie, can I start with you, now that you've decided you are a 4? How did this resonate for you?
Yeah, it rings a lot truer than last week.
Okay. When you were on drugs and not able to defend yourself.
So I think what I've come to realize since learning about the Enneagram is, like, previously I thought that everybody had the same range of emotion, and that maybe other people just couldn't access it. Or you know, like I thought everybody had the same sort of up and down that I did internally, and that they just, you know, were oblivious to it or kind of shut it down or whatever. And I'm coming to realize that other personality traits maybe don't kind of reach for the same highs and lows as what I as a 4 would. But so I think I always, you know, I feel like the emotions and feelings, that's kind of like the air I breathe, you know, that's the language that I can speak. But I'm kind of starting to have a bit more self-awareness about what that's like for other people to experience of me, if they don't have the same experience as I have.
Yeah, it totally does. So in terms of that observation that not everyone experiences the same highs and lows that you do, how does that serve you, having that, you know, ability to really feel the lows and feel the highs? What does that make life like for you?
I think that there's like a positive and a negative to it. I think, you know, like that's the way I want to experience life. I don't want to change that. But I suppose what's really kind of hit home is something for me to work on is the self-referencing talk.
Could you say more about that? I mean, what
I know I do it. I absolutely know I do it, and I catch myself.
And do you know why you do it?
Well, I do now that
that
I've learned about the Enneagram. I understand that I'm trying to connect. Yeah, and it does. It completely makes sense. But I suppose, and I've always kind of been aware and a little bit embarrassed that I do it, because I often start doing it, and then I go, man, I'm really talking about myself. Maybe I should like ask about the other person. And then by the end of the conversation, I'll be like, but you know, everyone has a different experience. So I'm trying to kind of, I think that's a good thing for me to work on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Jessie, how did you relate to this description of the type 4? What rings true for you?
You were dead on with the self-referencing. I do that all the time, and I realize I must be so annoying for everyone that I'm talking to. But I'm not trying to like make them feel bad or that I'm talking about myself. That's just how I'm relating to them. Mm-hmm. And the high and low definitely hits home too. I always thought that I was like crazy growing up, because when I was sad, I was super sad, or when I was happy, I was really happy. I don't know if I was like bipolar or what, but it makes sense now.
So how does this serve you in a work environment in terms of your, you know, as you bring these strengths to your team and the places where you work? What do you see as your biggest strengths?
I guess it's easy for me to motivate people and to be excited about something, and it's easy to get everybody else excited about it too, just because I'm so pumped on whatever we're working on, if it's actually something that is motivating me and is inspiring to me.
And so what things inspire and motivate you?
I like helping people. I like knowing that at the end of the day I helped make something better. Yeah.
So you took something ordinary and you made it extraordinary.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
Yeah.
And then I think you mentioned it before, but what would you say the challenge for you in your learning is?
Yeah, so I'm not sure if I would describe it as me wanting to be unique, but I get offended when people don't come for me for help. I don't know if that's kind of related to it, but I feel like I'm doing really well, why aren't you coming to ask me?
Right.
And when you ask somebody else, I don't know why, but it really offends me.
So would it be, I'm exceptional and you should see that?
Yeah,
or
kind of, I guess.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
And is there a feeling of, what is it about me that they're not accepting? So
Yeah.
it's kind of a feeling of maybe I'm not measuring up a little bit?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think that's kind of a classic characteristic of 4s, is that oftentimes they do feel misunderstood. And it can be very painful for a 4, because their deepest longing is to have connection, as it's been explained to me. Is that right?
Yeah, definitely.
So Whitney, based on the description that I provided of the 4, how do you relate to this?
Oh, I just sort of found myself shaking my head yes to basically everything you said. and in particular, you know, what's missing,
Did I leave anything out?
no.
Good job.
But one of the things that made it difficult for me to identify as a 4, as I was trying to figure out my type, was I've always had a hard time with the unique, or with the special. The unique thing, no problem. That's been obvious. You know, it's you know, I mean, this is how I dress most of the time, and you know, and it's sort of, and the good news is I'm kind of like, okay, this is how I dress, you know, whereas for a lot of my life, I mean, my mother and my sister wear very tailored clothes. They look like they've, you know, walked out of a Talbot's catalog, if that means anybody, you know, but very tailored clothes, very presentable, and, you know, I look like I'm going to a costume party, and with no particular theme, other than being a little odd. But I'm kind of like, yep, this is who I am. You know, that's one of the things, that's been one of the real gifts for me of the Enneagram, is just understanding myself and accepting myself as I am, and liking who I am, and helping me like myself as I am, and that's one of the things for me as a 4 that's been really, really hard. And also just not really knowing, I think one of the problems of having feelings as the bedrock, so to speak, is they're not very reliable. And, you know, it's like I can feel something now and 10 minutes later feel something completely different. But it's like every feeling I have, I think of it as like, this is it. And
So you're taking that feeling as gospel truth
Totally.
in that moment.
Totally, but I don't recognize it's in that moment.
Right.
And, you know, and that it'll pass.
Right.
I mean, I'm starting, with the help of the Enneagram and other things, I'm starting to, you know, kind of say, well, let's see how you feel, you being me talking to myself, in 10 minutes or whatever. But, you know, the special thing, that's been a harder thing for me to kind of come to terms with.
Do you think that's perhaps related to your counter type as the self-preservation?
I think that's part of it.
Could you speak a little bit about that? Because I think, again, not all types show up the same way. And it's the influence of that instinct, particularly if it's the counter type, that it's going to show a different presentation and expression, right? Like, for me as a counter type 3, I don't relate to the vanity piece until I got it was the vanity for having no vanity, duh, right? So for the self-preservation 4, how is that different for you? It sounds like it's different because you're not relating to the special.
You know, it's, I mean, the special thing, when I'm honest, when I got really honest with myself, there is, I'm not sure, it basically nets out to seeing myself as special, but I find there was this one time, this was probably 20 years ago, but it was something at tax time, and, you know, I was like, you know, saying to my attorney, for some reason my attorney was involved in something, and, you know, well, can't you just call the IRS and tell them our situation, you know, and kind of like thinking, well, you know, it basically netted out to being special, you know, but
it was done in sort of a cloaked, or
yeah,
you didn't see it for what it was.
Yeah, I mean, I now look back and I'm like, well, that's not, you know, this is the IRS. This is, I mean, it's like, you know, trying to have, you know, the administration of Stanford thinking I'm special, you know, that's a pretty high hurdle. But the IRS, I mean, they're not going to see anybody as special.
But you prevailed in attempting to get them to think that.
Yeah, I don't know what, but it really took my attorney some work to kind of go, this isn't going to happen. And then the envy piece is the other one that I really had, because I would say, you know, I've been, again, it's a very 4 thing. I've been interested in personal development since I was a teenager, and, you know, just always learning new personal development things, and I would, you know, kind of the list of difficulties people have in life, and, you know, it's just the last thing I am is envious. Just did, except for my sister. You know, I was very envious of my sister, and
so let's talk about envy, just to put it in perspective and context, right? Because all of the types have a particular vice. For 2s, it's pride. For 3s, it's vanity. For 4s, it's envy. For 5s, it's avarice. For 6, it's fear. For 7s, it's gluttony. For 8s, it's lust. And for 9, it's sloth or self-forgetting. And every single one of those 7 deadly capital sins plus 2 cause us to kind of like go, ew, right? So it's important to put it into context. And envy in the context of the 4 doesn't mean I want what you have, but rather I'm observing your happiness and noticing my lack of that by comparison. So it's a wanting what is perceived that other people have that they don't have, that they feel is a quality or a deficiency in themselves. Is that a fair way of describing envy? Is there?
Well, it's just, I think comparing myself, the best description I heard, which I'm like, oh yeah, I do that, is comparing myself to others and ending up short.
Yes. Perfect.
You know, comparing myself to others
What
and
she said.
Seeing myself as less than.
Yeah. Is that true for you, Jessie?
Yeah, definitely. At work, personal life too. If I see somebody having something that I don't have, I'm just like, well, why can't I have that? Why don't I already have that?
And how do you know they have that?
I don't know. Just, I guess, like you said, the perception that I get from them. Maybe they're putting off something that they don't actually have, but in my mind, I see them as having what I don't.
Yeah. It is perception because we never know what's happening for another person, but we see somebody who emulates something we aspire to, and we fall short by comparison. Is that true for you as well, Brady?
Yeah, I think when I first read about envy, I kind of got a little stuck on it too as well, until I realized that for me, it's about like little things that other people have or seem to have, not like a whole package. It's not like I want that person's life. It's that if I was a little bit more like this person in this way, then this
I'd
would
be happy.
I'd be happier. Because I don't see it as like an end goal either. I see it as like, you know, if I had Shelley's confidence, then I would be a little bit more able to, you know, express myself. If I had, you know, Chuck's organisational skills, then I would be a little bit more able to do the, you know, like it's like I can see, even in this room, but in my life generally, little things that I appreciate about other people. But instead of it being that I appreciate it, like instead of being able to communicate that I appreciate that about them, I'll often think, how do I get that for me? Because then my life would be better.
Right.
Yeah. So it's not like an overall package that I want to be this person, or I want this person's life. It's just a characteristic or, you know, something like that.
Yeah.
So once I kind of that clicked, then the envy thing kind of made sense to me.
So how do you become aware of that when it's happening?
I think it's just another of these self-mastery type goals for me that
It's a self-mastery goal?
yeah, so rather than, because then like at times I'll often, it becomes like a low point for me that I don't have this, or that I'm not like this, and usually it comes back to being able to connect with people, or like if I feel left out of a social situation, or if I feel like I don't like belong, or I suppose the flip side of that is the potential for being abandoned, to put more in the 4 words. But then it becomes like a depressive, not like depressed, but like it becomes like a thing that I get upset about. So I suppose I would like to become better at being aware of when that's happening, and kind of be a little bit more realistic, and being a bit more appreciative rather than envious.
So what you're describing is a great example of emotional equanimity, right? Which is the virtue on the high side for the 4. And this is the ability to basically take everything in balance, to practice experiencing life in the middle of the road. Not just the lows, not just the highs, but actually feeling okay, being in a place of just sort of balance. So what would that be like for you? How might you experience that?
I don't know that I ever have. Because that when I hit that point, then I'm like,
You get bored.
There's something more to
Right.
search for.
Right.
So I think.
So when you get to the middle, it feels boring.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think also I rate like extremely low on the body center.
Yeah.
So I think developing some skills in
Taking action.
and being grounded, like I think that would be a good start for me.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Great. Let's get our knee healed first before we start kicking out the deep knees, right? Yeah, good plan. And Jessie, how about you? What when we talk about kind of the lows and the highs and in the middle, what comes up for you?
Honestly, I don't know. I kind of get stuck on that question too, just because we are so turbulent and, up and down. So I kind of feel like I almost like that up and down though.
Right.
So,
So
it's
how-
like
so
I don't
it's
really
working
want
for
to-
you.
Yeah, I don't know if I would necessarily want to be the flat line. I guess I don't know.
Right.
It
So
sounds like it's dead right
basically
now.
dead.
Not gonna happen.
I love it. I love that. So what I'm hearing is that emotional equanimity just sounds like completely boring in a state we don't want to go to because it's the equivalent of flatline.
I feel like if I'm at that point, then I'm not really feeling anything. Like I guess for me, I have to feel really sad in order to appreciate being really happy. So I need both.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I understand that.
Yeah.
And so how does that work for you and conversely against you?
I guess it helps me understand other people's emotions too, just because I've kind of felt the entire spectrum. But then on the negative side, like you were saying, I do tend to lash out at and overreact to certain emotions that I feel. And then after the fact, I'm just kind of thinking, okay, I probably shouldn't have said that. I probably shouldn't have done that. But I always kind of take a step back and realize it. So I'm trying to be better at not making those snap decisions or snap judgments in the moment.
Right.
But I
So
do
pushing
try
the
to.
pause button.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, because in a work environment, that can actually be career limiting.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, emotional regulation is a good skill to develop, even if long enough to just run to the ladies' room and scream, right?
Yeah, I take walks.
Yeah, exactly. And I just wanted to also inquire about something you said in terms of really being able to relate to other people and connect to them. So that sounds like a marvelous skill to have, particularly, well, in any setting, but in a work setting. How does that support you?
If like my friend came over to me a month or so ago, super frustrated with work, that she wasn't getting, anything done that she needed to get done, and I just kind of like sat there with her and was able to like calm her down because she was crying. So I calmed her down and was able to kind of make her feel better, I guess. So I think just in a work setting, I'm able to kind of build people up when they're feeling down, or so.
You create a safe space for people to feel what they're feeling.
Yeah, exactly. I just
Right.
kind of let them feel what they're feeling. I feel like it's weird because I can understand what they're feeling, but a lot of times I don't really know what to say. So I'll just kind of listen and let them talk it out, and I'll give in my 2 cents here and there. But a lot of times I almost don't want to say anything because I want them to feel what they're feeling. I don't know if that's like a Freud thing or.
No, I think what you're saying, and as I'm hearing you, the quality the image that comes to mind is of a deep, still well that can really hold other people's pain without judgment, really giving people an outlet to just talk about what's on their minds, which is beautiful. It's a fabulous gift to be able to offer to people, right? Because there are some people who shall go unnamed who might have a difficult time with that when we're trying to get stuff done, right? So I would like to cultivate more of that for my own life, just so that I can be more present with people. And you're nodding your head, but you want to say anything about that as well?
Yeah, I mean, I now understand, like, over the years, people will come to me out of the blue, or I'll meet strangers that, start telling me pretty difficult stuff going on in their lives, and so it's like, I always think, like, what is this, right? Now I understand, like, there's something energetic about me that it's like, and I always do feel really comfortable, and I always feel really honored, and that they, want to tell me something, and grateful, and I let them know, and I think that, I do lapse into the two thing of wanting to fix a lot of the time. And so, what you were saying about just listening, I mean, I know when I'm really hurting, that's kind of the main thing I really want, is somebody to just listen to me. And so that's been one of my challenges, is to really cultivate just, making eye contact and just listening and tuning, developing more body awareness to like tune into like what I'm feeling, and and to take care of myself, and because a lot of times I get so empathetic that I then forget to take care of myself. I mean, I recently had a situation with somebody that I was dating last year, who just he's a 9, never takes initiative on his own part. And he emailed me and said he lives in San Diego, and he was thinking about applying for a job up here and stuff, and I'm like, wow, and I got so excited and supportive of him. We're not dating anymore, we're friends, and so supportive and encouraging to him that I didn't really think through, like, okay, how does this impact me, and then how do I feel about it? And I had a horrible sleepless night, woke up thinking, I wouldn't encourage anybody to move to this area, especially at 60, unless they're a real go-getter, extroverted person, which this person isn't. And also realizing, like, ooh, if he moves here, I'm the only person he knows. I'm going to feel really responsible. So I had to do a lot of backpedaling, whereas if I had just stopped and not acted right away, I tend to act on my emotions, act too fast, rather than doing the one.
Engage more your thinking center and rational analysis.
Well, and getting into my body. Yes. My best friend is a 1, and so I've started kind of thinking, okay, how would Kevin handle this situation? And I usually come up, it's like we've been really good friends for 30 years, so I usually like, oh, he would do this. And then I'm kind of like, oh, that just sounds so practical and boring. But I've learned the hard way to do that.
Practical, boring, middle of the road, flat line, can all have, right, some positive upsides, right? And it's just learning to take advantage of what the other types can offer us.
Right. And the thing that I would, when I kind of first heard the equanimity thing, and I thought, oh, I relate to what you're saying, but one of the things I've been learning as I've been working more and more with the Enneagram, as a 4, there's absolutely no way on God's green earth that I can ever go flatline. I mean, it's just not going to happen. So it's just sort of a matter of modulating and learning to ride the ups and downs. And I think two of the things that have been really kind of most helpful for me is like seeing the extraordinary in the ordinary, and kind of an extrapolation of that is kind of like, washing the dishes and just like really getting into it, and and just really looking at the dish, and it can be a little time consuming and people get, come on, we need to go, but
But what is it about that practice that centers you?
It really centers me, and it's like brings me into the reality and the present tense, and
there's nothing idealized about doing dishes and looking at the soap bubbles and really experiencing.
Well, I think there's a little bit in there, it's hard for me to, it's a work in progress. I'm hoping I can get to the point where when I have time to look at the soap bubbles, I'll do that, but it's like, if I just need to get the dishes done, I just get them done. But I'm starting to see and getting that feedback, like, oh, when I get my dishes done and my laundry done, and I get enough sleep, and, the things to do to keep the wheels of the bus on, that I feel so much better, and my life feels so much better. And I'm starting to get some payback from doing that, and that's helped.
One of the questions I have for you, 4 types, there are actually 2 questions. One is, when you're in that deep emotional state, whatever it is, being overreactive or feeling really sad. How do you want people to approach you and talk to you in that moment?
I typically withdraw. I typically don't have big outbursts, really. I tend to withdraw, so probably the people that see me in that state are more like my inner circle people. But on the times that, people do notice, I think my main thing is I just want to be acknowledged. Like, I don't want people to fix it. I don't want people to do things. I don't necessarily want even the situation changed. I just want, like, if I think that something is really bad, I just want someone else to go, yeah, I get it.
So instead of saying, oh, don't feel that way,
Yeah.
right, perhaps a more compassionate approach might to just be, I see you're really upset. I understand you're upset.
Yeah.
Is there anything I can do?
Yeah, perfect. And most of the time, I'll probably say, no, there's nothing you can do, but thanks for noticing. And that's enough for me, usually.
Is that true for you, Jess?
Yeah, I just don't want them to dismiss how I'm feeling is the big thing. I know I can be dramatic, but I don't want people to tell me you're being too dramatic. I'm feeling what I'm feeling. I can't change that.
Right, exactly. And Whitney, how about you?
It's weird. It's like on one hand, I don't like being cheered. Like if somebody's trying to go into hyperdrive and try to cheer me up, that really puts my teeth on edge.
Same.
But on the other hand, like if they just kind of are funny, or just get rent a silly, or send me an email that makes me laugh, or not with like, oh, I hope this cheers you up,
No.
but just thought you might like this kind of thing.
Introducing a little humor.
Helping getting me some humor is good.
It's interesting, I heard it described that the 4 sits in a very interesting position on the Enneagram between the drive of the 3 and the introvertedness of the 5. And so there's this really interesting oscillation that happens with, on the one hand, sort of being inspired to be excellent and taking action, and on the other hand, really just sort of wanting to withdraw and be quiet and introverted and apart from people. So it must be a really sort of challenging place to be, to have that dual dynamic working. Is that true?
Yeah, I'm in sales, so I go to work and have to talk to people all day. The second they come, I'm like, okay, I'm done. I go straight to my room. I don't come out. I watch Netflix or read a book, but I'm done for the day. Like, I've exhausted my extrovertedness for that day.
Right. But when you're in that space of extrovertedness, how are you?
I'm fine. Like, I enjoy talking to people. I like being around people, but at the same time, I really enjoy being by myself too. I like both. Like, I would rather do most things by myself, but it's not that I don't mind being there. I just like being by myself too.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then in terms of conflict, how do you relate to conflict? How does it show up for you? What's the best way to work with you in a situation where conflict is needing to be handled? And any of you that want to jump in, I don't want to just...
To be honest, I can't think of a major conflict I've ever been a part of. I'm more likely to get involved in really passionate political causes than I am to have conflict with people around me.
Right.
I don't. Actually, no, I can think of one time when I did have a conflict at work. And it kind of linked in with a political cause I'm really passionate about, so that probably made me more present in it. It was a male colleague who was being, condescending and treating me different because I was a female, basically. So it kind of got my feminist punching gloves on. So But again, I think all I wanted from, I was quite junior at the time, which kind of fed into it as well. But all I wanted management to do was acknowledge that it was an issue, and take some steps to. And it wasn't just me it wasn't me kind of causing the problem. Other young females had this same problem with this same colleague, but it kind of kept getting swept under the carpet. And so really what I wanted from management was acknowledgement of the issue. And I was happy to play my part in the conflict resolution. I was happy to turn up and be there. And even change some of the ways that I was interacting with this person, because I was sort of becoming resentful and, avoiding doing joint work that we needed to do together. So I was happy to take responsibility for where I was doing the wrong thing, but I wasn't satisfied until there was acknowledgement of it. And I actually ended up leaving that job because about 12 months down the track, they put this same colleague as my supervisor. And I was like, I'm done. And I walked away.
Okay.
So, I was happy to be happy to be there and do whatever work needed to be done, but there wasn't an acknowledgement, and worse, they
So you
promoted
left.
this
You
person.
withdrew.
So I
withdrew.
put in my resignation and
Yeah.
I left. So I'll stick with something if I'm really passionate about it. If I am disinterested, then
But there's also, I may leave you before you can leave me,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So there's an element of that
Oh,
in
absolutely.
the mix.
Yeah. And
Right.
it was not a smart move on my behalf to leave this really great job that I absolutely loved doing.
Interesting.
I definitely could have managed that part of my career.
Yeah, so
Very
that's
differently.
important to know, isn't it? Because we can shoot ourselves in the foot inadvertently
Oh, absolutely.
by sort of not being aware of our blind spots,
Mm.
right? That we really get attached to our position around something,
Mm.
and instead of allowing ourselves to soften and to look at other ways of approaching it,
Yeah.
we're like, we do what we do.
Oh yeah,
We-
and that reminds me, I did the same thing when I was a teenager with my first job. I left because, on a whim, because I wasn't happy with how a situation was done. I'd
Right.
forgotten about that. But yeah, 15, I did the same thing.
Well, and again, it's that, so fours are in the category of idealists. The ones, fours, and sevens are the idealists. And so if something in reality doesn't match up to the internal picture of what's ideal, something's got to give. It's either a reconciliation of what I'm seeing is in fact as good as it's going to get and I'm okay with that, or I am really principled on this and it's got to be better than it is, and I'm going to go search for greener pastures, or maybe the middle ground, which doesn't exist for you guys.
But maybe slightly closer to the middle ground than resigning from a great job.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you. Jessie, how about you? How do you experience conflict?
Yeah, I actually had a similar situation that I'm still dealing with. One of the guys on my team likes to pick on me when I'm successful and kind of likes to make me feel bad about being successful. And I went up to him and kind of just confronted him like, hey, like, what's your problem with me? Let's sort this out. And he was just super dismissive, has yet to this day to acknowledge that he does that. So I just kind of keep my distance. I'll talk to him when I need to talk to him, but I'm just going to try to be the bigger person and not engage as much as I can.
I just have to ask you this question. What do you think that says about him?
I think he's just maybe insecure with his own work. And he's taking it out on me.
Right. Yeah. So what would be a way that you could flip that around so that it doesn't cause you distress and so that you don't have to basically take the long way around the building to avoid him?
Yeah, I just try not to let it get to me. I guess obviously I do get heated about it at times when it gets persistent, but I just try to ignore it, honestly. It's not worth me stressing about.
Maybe changing the belief you have about it
Yeah.
from I'm believing that I'm less than because he's telling me I'm less than, which triggers, that 4 reaction of being misunderstood, to this is about his insecurity and I'm rocking this job, right? So I'm going to stand my ground and own that I'm really good at this and believe that I'm really good at this.
Yeah, I should try doing that more, I think.
Just a helpful hint from Heloise. Coach Heloise.
Question. Just so interested in what you were saying.
So just on the subject of conflict, how does that show up
conflict,
for you?
Yes. Conflict. I try to pretend it doesn't exist. No, I definitely am a conflict avoider. And I'm on one hand I'm a conflict avoider. On the other hand, once I see what the problem is, I go and address it. And I 2 different situations. One in a job that I had many years ago, my boss teased me all the time. I don't like being teased in the first place.
Nobody does.
And he teased me a lot. He had known me, I was in my early 30s, he'd known me since I was 10, and his daughter and I are the same age, and he still kind of, and I talked to a couple different people about it, asked what to do, and I finally decided I was just going to go talk to him. And I made it, told him I needed to talk to him about something, and could there be a time, and went and talked to him. And he's a pretty self-aware person, and so I was cautiously optimistic it would go, and it actually did go really well. And he was, one of the things for me, though, is when I'm in a situation where I'm standing up for myself and stating my wants and needs, I tend to cry.
Me too.
And I get scared and I tend to cry, which doesn't exactly, especially in a work situation,
Can be challenging.
lend to my credibility. And I don't mean to be putting the other person into taking care of me, or
But it's you're feeling distressed.
I get scared, and I get scared, and I definitely have this feeling like I can't have my wants and needs, and it's not okay for me to have wants and needs, and it's also not okay for me to be happy. I feel like that's like one of the things for me lately is trying to let more of the 3 side of me come out, and take you and my mom and other 3s in my life as role models, and like, okay, how would you all handle this, and and just see that it's like I have a right to be happy just as much as anybody else.
So there's another asset for the 4s that if you look at the harmony triad of the Enneagram, where we have the 1-4-7 connection, the 7 is a huge asset to the 4 in terms of being able to get them outside of themselves, seeing the world as a really fun and entertaining place to be, with lots of interesting distractions, and it's that mental side of it as well, right? So it's getting out from the heart center and into more of a sort of just enjoying life for the fun, entertaining, and joyful aspects of it. So I want to invite you guys to think about that as well. So just in closing, any last words on, if there were a place that you could start your development path, just one simple thing, what might it be?
Self-awareness, pushing the pause button, like you said, I definitely could use a lot more of that.
Okay, thank you. Friday, anything for you?
Yeah, I think the pause button thing, because I think it relates to a number of goals that I'd like to work on, like the reacting, the withdrawing, or the self-referencing, just pause a moment, assess what's actually going on, and then respond.
Definitely that. I think the other thing in relation to the leadership paragraph that you read is what makes me thrive in a situation is when I feel I'm collaborated to come up with the vision of what we're doing, and that I'm really inspired by that, and that I'm kind of left alone to figure out what I need to do. And for me, one of the things that's been a learning curve for me is realizing that that's not, a lot of people like to have direction. They like to be, you know, I need to do X, or to have it spelled out a little more specifically. Like, I hate being told what to do, so I assume anybody else doesn't. I don't mean, you know, demeaningly telling somebody what to do, but I assume other people don't like direction, and I've come to learn, like, with people that work for me, when I say, can you do X? And I'm like, you know, sweating, oh God, they're gonna hate it that I say this. Oh sure, I'd be happy to. I'm like, you know, whereas if somebody came up to me and said, can you do X? I'd feel like, okay, you know, I'd do it, but I wouldn't be.
So you're making a really important point, and it's relevant to all the types. When we see the world through our lens, we assume that everybody wants the same thing applied to them. When we see the world through the lens of other people and we ask the question, how do you want to be managed? Well, I need a little bit more direction than I'm getting, right? Good feedback. Ellie, did you have a question?
I have a question for the panel at the right time.
Yeah, now's a good time.
I was wondering, do you find it difficult as far as to maintain long-term personal relationships or romantic relationships?
I'm just going to repeat the question. Do you find it difficult to maintain long-term romantic relationships? Is that the question?
Correct.
I was married for 31 years.
Pardon me?
I was married for 31 years, so no.
But you did get divorced.
I did, but it was my ex-husband that wanted to get divorced.
I see.
I've been with my husband for a third of my life.
Pardon me?
I've been together with my husband for a third of my life.
Oh, really?
So
She was 11 when she got married. She's a child bride.
That
You know?
surprises
Yeah, I'm only 22, so I'm not trying to get married anytime soon. But I have been with my boyfriend for a while. The only thing that is hard for me is he's a 3, so he doesn't like to feel or talk about it. I'm just like, God, just talk to me about it. I need to like know what you're feeling, but he just doesn't like doing that. So it's been a challenge for us both because he feels like I probably say too much and he says too little. But yeah, actually this class has kind of helped a lot. I kind of bring home what I learned, and he's like, oh yeah. So that's actually helped.
yeah. My husband's a 6. I think we kind of complement each other fairly well, although we both do have a tendency to withdraw. So that's it, you know. But we kind of have our like little circle, and family is sacred to us, you know, that type of thing. So
Interesting.
yeah,
Is
maybe
that your experience, of course? Because my experience with the handful I know is everyone's divorced.
I think, again, it's that continuum. Where are they on that path of self-development, and how much work have they done in their marriage? I think the challenge for 4s in relationship is, first of all, finding a love that meets their idealized expectations. And then, because the fear of abandonment is so strong that oftentimes the dynamic can be setting it up to challenge the other person so that they'll leave, thus proving the self-fulfilling prophecy that, you know, yet once again I'm going to be abandoned. But the people who love 4s love their 4s and they understand that dynamic, and they're not put off by, you know, it's just kind of like she just needs a little space or he needs a little space, right? I think that any personality in the unhealthy end of the continuum is going to have difficulty in any relationship for the reasons that we understand. It's the shadow side that's leading the show, right?
In the case of the 4, though, isn't there this general process of really wanting something desperately which is over the horizon, for example, a romantic interest, throwing your whole life into achieving it, and as soon as you get it, it looks like a piece of shit.
I definitely did that as a teenager. Reached a little, you know. But I learned pretty quickly after 3 or 4 embarrassing relationships that, you know, I found someone who appreciated
You for you.
Yeah.
So it's about authenticity,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I think that was it. I think I discovered that what I was reaching for, once I got close to it, I was like, oh, right, that is not what I was hoping for. So, you know,
It's like
I
saying,
did learn from that.
it's like saying, Ellie, that, you know, you can't be in a relationship with sevens because they're all narcissists, right? So there are unhealthy aspects and healthy aspects. And oh, close your ears, Jessie. You're still too young to hear this. But no, seriously, as we're working on ourselves and understanding, I mean, we have life experience that basically, you know, after the third or fourth 2x4, we finally ask ourselves the question, what's not working here? And maybe it has to do with me, right? And that's where we start, you know, sort of changing our presentation and recognizing and taking responsibility for our own fears and our own sadness that really is sort of underpinning the sabotage. And I'm not a psychologist, so I think I'll stop right there. So
I just want to say the thing for me in terms of the idealized thing is the perfect house. If I just had the perfect house, and I don't mean mansion or anything like that, I just, this fantasy that I had, and so I moved, you know, it was sort of when in doubt, move, and it, you know, and my ex-husband, who was 7, you know, it was like, yeah, sure, fine, let's move, that sounds fun, you know, but he got sick of it after a while too, and, you know, but we were a great team in doing that kind of thing, and, you know, it was kind of like I took care of the sad, unhappy aspect of life, and he took care of the happy aspect of life, and he had a lot of one in him that kind of did keep the wheels of us going.
Mike, you have a question?
Yeah, so as far as I understand, like emotions are kind of your driving force and, you know, kind of what you live by. But the emotions kind of, they fleet, it seems like. They're like fleeting
Yes.
emotions. They, you know, they come and go. You guys ever like hold like a sad emotion for like a long time over issues or dwell on anything for periods of time?
Yeah, I'm a dweller for sure. If something bad happens, I'll think about it over and over and over and get really upset about it, and then eventually I'll just kind of snap out of it. But it kind of depends on how bad I perceive that problem to be, like how long I'll actually be sad for. But yeah, I do think about things like that for a while.
I feel like I can be happy and sad at the same second. So,
Wow.
like,
So you-
about, you know, different
So you can be
things.
dwelling on like a sad
So I can
issue,
hold-
but still have those happy emotions, like
Yeah.
during an event or like
Yeah, or just life in general, like, you know, right now.
driving in the car, you
There's
start
great,
laughing.
there's great things happening in my life. I'm, you know, at a happy place, but, you know, there's a couple of things that are kind of at the back that aren't so quite as happy, but they're both there. Yeah. So I can dwell on things for a long time, and I often replay conversations over and over.
All day.
All the time.
What do
you
they
know.
really mean?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah?
yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, what do they
And
really
what-
mean, and what did I mean, and did I say what I wanted to say, and what do they think of me now, and yeah, no, it's
Like years down the track, I can still
Oh,
have the
oh,
same
totally.
conversations.
So remember what we said about 4s, it's the amplification of feeling, right? It's not just letting a feeling be, but it's putting it on steroids, right? Oh, yes, Shelley.
Well, for me, for 4s, so 4s are tough to be able to really understand because you really are so different and individual from other people, and there's this moodiness. And so for me, I like to have a number, one number of each of the numbers that I love very much, and I've loved for years, and I just truly love. So my best friend is a 4, and I've worked with him for 25, 30 years, and I know him so well. And to be able to know that, to know and love a 4, and to be able to understand however you would call it, your foibles or whatever it is that, you know, that makes that sort of moodiness and that depth of all of the feeling for everything that happens. Just to be able to understand that is very helpful for me, because I mean, he'll say something like, you know, what did you mean? Are you mad at me? And I go, what? Am I mad at you? What are you talking about? I mean, and just to be able to kind of understand all of that stuff so well is very helpful for me, for 4s, to have that.
I think there's a tiny little bit about being a 4 though that makes you want other people to not quite understand.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
You like the melancholy of
He,
that.
he
Yeah.
wants, they want not to be understood. There's a part of them that feels that they want to maintain that mysterious persona.
But the other side, we absolutely want to be understood and
Right.
accepted. Yeah, I feel like being a 4, there's a whole heap of tensions, and that's just one.
A whole heap of conundrums.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
One question.
I think Tom.
Just real quick, I'm hearing you say a lot of things that I'm relating to as a 6, so I'm just trying to make sense of it. Because 6s struggle with projection versus insight, but I still have the same internal conversations after like a social event or something. I'll struggle with how I ended the conversation or left or something, and I just get really hung up about things like that, and kind of the perception that I left with people. But I think for me, it stems from fear of them not liking me, or like burning bridges or saying the wrong thing or something. But I was just kind of curious about like how that pertains to 4s.
My husband's a 6, and we often come away from the same situation and debrief about it, and we often have the same thought process about it, but his is very much motivated by fear, and mine's very much motivated by sadness.
Okay.
That's
That
the
is the
difference.
key
We can like
difference.
word for word perceive it in a very similar way,
Okay.
the same way even, but it's his. It always comes down to the fear.
Mm.
Vicky?
I was just wondering if, as a 4, do you find yourself, it sounds like you find yourself over-analyzing situations, and then do you possibly create situations that really weren't there to begin with because you've overthought it, if that makes sense?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I do that all the time, and it gets me into trouble.
Really?
Yeah, I listen to a lot of books on CD, and I never read the Chronicles of Narnia, so reading that, and there's this thing where this professor is like deducing this situation. It's like, let's apply logic here, and it's like logic has always been something that's just I just don't get. But it was interesting as he was kind of going. It's a children's book, so it's kind of going through it step by step. I'm like, oh, okay, and it's seeing kind of like, I think that would be a useful skill to develop.
So what I'm hearing you say is it's not overthinking, it's over-feeling and kind of going to is it the depth of the
Yeah,
emotion?
it's kind of, it's both. It's overthinking the overfeeling,
Yeah.
and not stopping to kind of like put all the cards on the table
Right.
and going, okay, what makes sense here, and because it's like I'll leave a social situation kind of like I'm sure that somebody doesn't like me, that's my general thing is I'm just sure and I'm sure part of that is like, okay, I'll go to that they don't like me before they indeed do reject me. So I'm sure that's part of what's going on.
Is it getting back to, at the core of it, it's that fear that that person's going to leave me, or I'm going to get left behind, or I'm going to be misunderstood?
It's more just this feeling of inadequacy.
Inadequacy, so I'm not measuring up.
Yeah, it's
Okay,
like
thank you for clarifying
yeah, and
that.
it's like this. Yeah, inadequacy. I think that's like one of my big, things that I'm kind of working on is kind of going, I'm just as adequate as the next person, and it's.
So that's your growth.
Yeah, it's just and looking it kind of like a kind of switch. I'm kind of using this game of realizing that I kind of am always going, what's missing, to kind of like just flip it and go, okay, what's here, and kind of use that same skill that I've developed really well, because I kind of like, wow, there's a lot. It took a lot of people, me whining about my life a lot, and friends going, your life looks really pretty good to me, Whitney. And then I'd get mad at them. And then kind of by the time about 8 different people who didn't even know each other said this, like, oh, my life is really
Maybe
pretty
there's
good.
some actual feedback here, right? Thank you. Sega, did
I
you
have
have?
a question. Actually, two questions. One question was, when you are in your lows, how do you
how do you manage those lows? Like for example, there are moments where you are extremely excited, but there are situations when the troughs. How do you manage those? And then what is the correlation between a 2 and a 4? Because I was able to resonate to I'm a 2, but
So there's a very strong line between the 4 and the 2. And the Enneagram of process, it's 1, 4, 2. 4 goes to 2 under stress, and 1 as a growth path. So the line to 2 is to basically become very more outwardly focused on other, as opposed to inwardly focused on self. And so that the way that Helen Palmer describes it is the 4 is seeking the affections of other people by emulating some of the 2 attributes of being charming and flattering and doing sort of acting in that way. And with the 1, kind of on the low side of 1, it's being somewhat perfectionistic and critical of the relationship. But the high side is also having very high standards and applying, principled and more sort of, methodical approach to thinking things through or to understanding situations.
You were asking the difference between the 2 and the 4?
The relationship between the 2 and the 4.
Oh, okay.
And do you want to comment on that as well?
Well, it's I for a lot of the Enneagram workshops I took, I would go in thinking I was 4, and then I'd hear the description of the 2, and I'm like, 2. I'd really relate to the 2, and but it was the more I worked with it, and the 2s that I knew, and I think partly also it's like the 2 going to 8, and for me, it's like I really have to develop that 8 side of me. It's not readily accessible. So I think that was part of the thing that really helped me realize it's like, no, I'm not a 2. It's hard to really kind of, hold my own and say, stop, I'll just go hide.
So guys, I hate to cut us off, but we could literally go on all night because I love panels, and I think they're fascinating in terms of really giving us insight into each of the types. So I really want to say thank you so much for what you've shared with us tonight and for being brave and sitting up here and sharing yourself with us. So what we're going to do is we're going to just take a